does broken into beautiful? What does it mean for Carolyn?
You know, it represents my life. Because, you know, I come from an incredible family. I mean, you saw, we've been together doing ministry for over 30 years, if that gives away my age a little bit. But we've been out telling the world, and my family, we're not a perfect family, but we're close. There was 7 kids in our family. My dad said it wasn't no record, but it wasn't no hobby either. And so we were out, and it finally got to the point that my mom and dad couldn't travel with us anymore. And so one day, we were out ministering, but we weren't going to be very far away from home. And my parents said, can we come with you guys? And I was 6 years old, and I was out traveling with my family. We said, we would love for you to come. And we sang that night, and my brother got up on stage and gave his testimony. And my mom, who was sort of a quiet, shy woman, stood up and gave her testimony that night, Morris. And I'll never forget, because I could hear her hand tapping on the bench where she was so nervous. And she told every one of us kids how proud she was of us, but how she was committed that night to do more for God than she'd ever done before. Wow. Not knowing that 4 hours later, we'd be on our way home. And my dad had a brain aneurysm, and he didn't know it. And we were 20 miles from our house. And my brother said that he felt the van go really hard to the left. And when he did, it jerked so hard that he leaned up to see what was going on, and Dad's hands were straight up in the air. His eyes were back, they were rolled in the back of his head, and it hit something else, flew back over to the right, and began to flip 3.5 times on that interstate. Wow. And when it finally stopped, it came and it was on its roof. But it was, my mom got thrown from the van, and I got thrown out of the van, and I flew out the window and slid on the ground in glass, and I mean, blood was coming out of my eyes, nose. They did not think I was gonna make it. And my brother, once it got to on its roof, and it stopped, my brother was trying to get everybody out of the vehicle, and he was screaming, where is Mom? Where is Mom? And they said, we can't find her. He said, check it again, check the van again. And what we thought to be a piece of equipment about 50 yards away, they went over, and it was our mom, and she had been thrown from the van and landed on her head and was taken home to be with Jesus instantly. Wow. And so they got there, and they took my dad and I to the hospital. And they rolled us back in a room and said, there is nothing we can do for him here. You're going to have to get him to someplace else that's bigger. So they took us, they rolled us back in a room, and they said, we just don't think she's going to make it till the morning. And so my family, being a godly family, thank God they didn't have pride. In the middle of that hospital, Morris, they fell down on their knees, and they said, Lord, you've got Mama. And we don't understand it, and it hurts. But we're going to worship you in the middle of this pain. But we're going to ask those stripes that you just got done speaking about. Yes. She would go in there and touch our little sister's body. I was 6. And I had the quickest recovery in that hospital for severe brain trauma and a whole bunch of other. God is so alive. He's so good. He's so good. But that was just the beginning of what life was going to hold for us.
Mm-hmm. Were you the youngest in your family?
I'm the baby of 7.
You're the baby.
I'm the baby of 7. But we were, you know, we had been brought up with a foundation that it wasn't about a religion, that it was about a relationship with a living, breathing man upstairs.
Amen.
And thank God for that, because the trials were going to come. They were going to come. The winds were going to blow. See, that's what people want to get all shook up when they don't understand. Where is it all coming from? The Bible tells us they are going to come. Trials and tribulations are going to come, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. So we were standing on that word.
The truth is that you had unshakable faith. And you know what unshakable faith really is? It believes that God is not a man that he should lie.
I know that. I know it not because of a theory, because of an experience. Because that was just the beginning of what our journey held. It was 7 years later. And my dad called us up on the telephone. And after the accident, my dad wasn't always the same. I mean, I'd walk into a room and he wouldn't always recognize me. He'd say, what might your name be, little girl? And I'd be like, Daddy, I'm your little girl. Oh, yeah. He'd say, yeah. But he couldn't handle loud music. And so we got a call one night. And he was so happy. I have never heard him this happy. And so we said, Daddy, you're going to have to turn down that music and that preaching because I cannot hear you. And he said, oh, hang on a second. And he came back and he said, I just got to tell you kids how proud I am of you.
Oh, my.
And he said, if I've ever done anything to hurt you, I am so sorry. And I was able to say, Daddy, you've been an incredible father. You have 7 kids who love Jesus and they're out telling people that Jesus is alive. What are you complaining about? And so, not knowing that 4 hours later, that would be the last time I'd ever get to speak to my father, that he had a chimney, a flue in the house. The old-fashioned way that you cleaned out a chimney was you got it so hot that it just cleaned that flue on out. But what he didn't know is the wood and the paper that he was bringing home had glue on it, and it made a bomb. And it just exploded, and it just blew the whole back part of our house out. And somehow our dad got from his room to the back of the house, but he went home to be with Jesus through smoke inhalation that night. But let me tell you, I realized that evening when I went home, and you understand when I talk about the feeling of numbness.
Right.
You're just numb. You don't know how to pray. You don't know how to cry. You just feel like, what are you doing, God? And I knew at that moment I had a choice. Our whole family did. Either get bitter. What's that lead to?
Right.
Do I get angry at God? How dare you, God? Oh, pity me. Oh, what's wrong with my life? Here I am out serving you, God, and this is what I get. Or do I walk in faith and trust God that all things work together for good to them that love God?
You've gone through these circumstances, but somehow you've been able to keep your faith so strong and so intact that here you sit today as an incredible overcomer. And you know, the first thing that comes as a temptation to us, and I think you probably went through this, we blame God.
Yeah.
And we ask him, why?
You know what I learned? Is God never answers our whys because he knows we're looking for an argument and not really an answer.
Wow.
And I'm telling you what God is
Did
teaching
you hear
us.
that? I mean, did you hear that?
Yeah, he knows we're looking for an argument. And you know, that is one of the biggest tricks of the enemy is he gets us stuck in the why. And I get a phone call from my brother who you saw on one of the pictures that told me that he had pancreatic cancer at 43 years old. I dropped the phone, Morris. My husband thought somebody had died right then because I just went weak. And I ran for I don't know how long, and all I could scream up to heaven was, no, you cannot do this. God, we're out here serving you no more. How much more can we take? And I know those of you listening to me today, you know what I'm telling you. You're tired. You feel like, how much more can you take? But you know what I love about Jesus? I didn't feel him look at me and say, oh, go read 10 more scriptures, oh, ye of little faith.
Right.
You know, I felt him wrap his arms around me like he did Mary and Martha when Lazarus had passed away. And he wept with me. And he's weeping with you right now, saying, if you'll just trust me, even though you don't understand, and trust me, I can tell you I have been there where I didn't understand, but I trust God. And I'm telling you today, my husband said this to me 100 times last year, Carolyn, God is real.
Yes.
And he loves you.
Absolutely.
Not because I minister to the world, not because I've seen hundreds of thousands come to know Christ. The Bible says that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for me. He died for you. There is no respecter of person. What he's done for me, what he's done for you, Morris, he wants to do for you. Pick up that phone and call helpline today and let someone pray for you.
Carolyn, we want to thank you today
Appreciate
for
the
being
honor.
so transparent, facing these incredible difficulties, because your brother did die of cancer.
He did. We believed on faith for healing. But there's no uh-ohs in heaven.
No.
God's not up there going, how'd you show up here?
Yeah.
There's no uh-ohs. We believed, and God is still a healer.
Amen.
But he had other plans.
Right.
And let me tell you what God has showed me this year is, Carolyn, don't look back for your future.
No.
That's not where God is. My God is in front of me.
Amen.
And this morning I'm going to tell you, God's in front of you. You got to look ahead. That's where the hope of Christ is. That's where your joy comes. And that's what I'm standing on today. I'm passionate.
You are.
Yes.
And you're an inspiration Let's tell Carolyn we love her. We appreciate her today.